Good afternoon, everybody. How are you doing? It's me. I'm back with another subject. Today, I want to speak about not allowing fear, and it could be possibly unfounded fear, to prevent you from going for what it is you truly do want and going for those things that are best for your life. I'll give you a little backdrop as to what it is I mean. In 1995, I was working on a magazine with this particular girl who I call Cam. Now, Cam had gone to university in Brighton. She's born and raised in the UK, but her background is that she's from Pakistan. Her family's from Pakistan. She moved from Wolverhampton to Brighton to do some her studying, and then from Brighton she was now commuting to London to do her work after obviously she's finished her degree. And as we, got to know each other and such, and like she was saying that her parents were really wanting her to start thinking about getting married, and she'd kind of like stave them off, she'd fob them off, they'd just like let her kind of get on with it, let her live her life. And the reason that she'd fob them off was because she was in a relationship with an English guy, and she really, really, really loved him. I think by the time I met her, they'd possibly been together for about 2 or so years, and he wanted to marry her, but she wouldn't marry him because she's afraid of what her parents' reactions might be. Not what they would be, what they might be. And he was an agnostic or an atheist. He had no faith, but as she was a Muslim, he was willing to convert to Islam for her so he could be with her. She had met all of his friends. She'd met his family lots of times. She's fully ingrained in his group of important people. But he didn't really have that access to hers. She would never take him home to meet her family. I think only one of her sisters knew about his existence, but her mother and father didn't know. And I would say to her, listen, why don't you just tell your mum and dad about him? Because from what you've been telling me, your parents aren't the kind of people that are really interested in other people's opinions. They're more interested in your welfare. Because in her culture, as she told me, if you're a female and you go away to university, by the time you graduate, you need to get back home. And in a short time after that, maybe like after you land like a really high paying job, you get married, you start having the kids, and then you repeat the cycle again with your own family. But her parents weren't like that. They allowed her to remain in Brighton where she'd been studying. They didn't pressurize her to come home. She'd been fobbing them off way past the time that culturally is acceptable for a female to get married. So let's just say, I think it was like 20, or let's just say it was 22, 23. She was now knocking 27. And like, as far as some people say, like, she's an old maid, so what's she doing? Why isn't she getting married? She's getting really, really old, sort of thing. And, her parents just kind of like let her get on with it, let her live her life, let her enjoy her life, let her enjoy her friends, let her enjoy her social circle. At that right time, time that was right for her, she'd get married. And so they just let her get on with her life. And from what she was telling me, it didn't seem like her parents would have an issue with her bringing home someone who wasn't Asian. But she wouldn't go for it. She just wouldn't do it. I said to her, look, just allow them to meet him. They might really like him. And she said, no, they'll never accept him. He hasn't got a good paying job. He didn't go to university. He doesn't have A, B, C, D. They would judge him, wouldn't fit into the community, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, you really love this guy, and he really loves you, and he really wants to marry you. Don't you think you should give him a chance? Don't you think you should at least allow your parents opportunity to meet him and let them decide for themselves whether or not they like him or not? Wasn't having any of it. To the point that I personally believe she sabotaged her relationship. They'd been going, by the time they broke up, they'd probably been together the best part of 10 years. And he kept on, he really wanted to marry her. He wasn't just dating her to date her. He had been with her long enough to know that he wanted to marry her. He wanted desperately to marry her. He was crazy in love with her. He would have done anything for her, anything to make her happy. But she wouldn't take that chance on him. And consequently, the relationship ended. Some years after that, and I know, she was really kind of upset. And he was as well, obviously, because like it seemed like she was just stringing him along for her own ends. She loved him also, she said, but not enough to introduce him to her parents, not enough to take a risk on him and marry him. So, I can only imagine how he felt. But some years afterwards, she was in Pakistan for something, and she met this man, And it turns out she's now telling me that she's going to marry this guy. I was like, oh yeah, I thought you said you didn't like Asian guys, which is what something she said. I didn't agree with that at all. I don't believe in people saying that they wouldn't marry this person, that person, because of whatever. And to me, she's Asian. How can she say she wouldn't marry Asian guys? I thought that was stupid. That's what she used to say all the time. And I thought it was kind of strange. I thought, okay, well, we were just like going through the whole thing. Well, how can you marry him? When did your feelings change? Because like you always said, like you hate Asian guys, you want to marry English, you want to marry an English guy, you have this English guy, you wouldn't introduce him to your parents, your relationship fell apart after how many years? Feelings like that don't just go in such a short space of time. Even though from the time she had broken up with the English guy to the time she met this Asian guy, it was maybe like say 2 or 3 years, but still, you know, the strength of the relationship we have with the English guy, she'd need more than 3 years to recover from it. I think so anyway. And so I was like, okay, well, tell me about, let me just tell me about what this English guy, what was it that you really loved about him? And she went on and on. She just really loved him. He's a soulmate. They had so much fun together. They did this and the other together and blah, 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 blah. I was kind of, tell me about this other one. And she's like, well, you know, he's very respectful. Like, you know, he would line up my shoes outside the room here in Pakistan, and he's really nice to my family. And I said, whoa, wrong answer. Not one time did she mention love. Not one time did she mention anything that would indicate that this was somebody that she was marrying for all the right reasons. Not one time. It just struck me that she wanted to find somebody who she felt would be accepted by her family. I was saying, look, we both believe that marriage is for life. You do, I do. Are you seriously saying you're willing to invest your entire life in a guy who you don't love anywhere near as much as you love that English guy? In fact, I don't think you love this guy at all. And she's like, well, you know, he's from Pakistan, you know, we're both Pakistani, I think we have a lot more in common. And she's just trying to convince herself. I think for me, she was convincing herself out loud, using me as a sounding board to do that. And I'd say to her again, you know, really think about this. This is for life now. Do you really want to go down this route for life with someone that you're not really in love with? Well, she said yeah, so she did it. And, you know, it was kind of a hard transition for both of them because he was born and raised in Pakistan, and at the time that she had married him, he was still living in Pakistan. He hadn't left the country, I don't think, ever. And then he emigrated over here to be with her and such. Like there was like a lot of clashes, obviously, because like even though they're both in Pakistan, culturally they're very different. She was born and raised in the UK. He was born and raised in Pakistan. So there's like a whole load of things I had to understand and work their way through and such. Fast forward maybe 10, is it 5 or so years, 5 or 10 years? I can't remember the exact time, but just say 5 years, you're on the safe side. One of her sisters got married. To who? An English guy. Did her parents accept the English guy? Yes, they did. And I can only imagine what was going through my friend's mind. I call her Cam. I can only imagine what was going through her mind when she realised that her parents accepted this guy. Had she listened to what I was saying all those years ago and gave her parents a benefit of the doubt and credited them with a bit more wisdom and a bit more than she actually did, she could have been married to the man of her dreams right now. They had such a life together. They really knew each other very, very well. They were so ideally suited. But because of fear of what might happen or how people might perceive their relationship, she allowed something that was really good for her to get flushed down the toilet into nothingness. And she's now settling with a man who she doesn't love anywhere near as much. I mean, yeah, she's found a way to kind of like him, and like, you know, they have a life together. She's been with him for quite some time, but not anything like the love she felt for the first guy, the guy that she met when she was in university. And I just thought that is such a sad thing to have happened. She allowed her fear to rob her of something that was destined for her. She allowed her fear to rob her of her blessing. I'm not saying it would have been a perfect marriage. I'm not saying anything like that because, like, you know, life happens, people grow apart, all kinds of things. However, this person that she'd known so well, that she had loved so much for so many years, is now gone because she wouldn't take the risk and bring him home and allow her parents to meet him. She wouldn't bring him home and say to mum and dad, this is the man I actually love and this is the man I want to marry. She wouldn't do it. She wouldn't do it at all. and now she's lost out. And now she never gave her parents a chance to get to know her English boyfriend. She never gave her parents a chance to meet him and to discuss with him and get to know if this was something that they wanted for their daughter. She didn't give them the chance. She decided for them that they wouldn't like him, and so therefore it wasn't going to happen. And one of the last times I spoke to her, she was still keeping tabs on her former English boyfriend. She knows that he's married to an Asian girl. He's got a child now. And I'm thinking, well, if you're married to this guy now, why are you keeping tabs on what your old boyfriend is doing? Because it's still there. She's looking at what might have been for her. I personally believe she's settled with the guy that she's with now because she was too afraid to pursue happiness with the first guy. And now she'll never know she'll never know what could have been. And I just say that to say, sometimes we need to kind of break away from people's expectations and letting people dictate what we do or what we don't do because of what their beliefs and their opinions are. Opinions are fine, everyone has them, but don't allow another person's belief or another person's opinion shape or direct the course of your life. You have got to do that for you. You know, some people say, well, you know, it's very important, you've got to marry someone who's just like you because like they need to be able to fit into your family, you need to be able to have, you know, peace in the family and such like. But even if you're of the same culture, your family life might be terrible. The in-laws might hate each other. The families might hate each other. The fact that you are of the same nationality does not guarantee peace within your family. It just doesn't. So her thinking was completely screwy as far as I was concerned. Fear was making all these decisions for her. And as a result, she's missed out on a blessed relationship. She really has. And I just want to say to you, don't kind of make decisions like that. Don't say, well, I'm going to do this or do that because... Or I'm going to do this or not do that because I don't want people to look at me a certain way, or I do want people to look at me a certain way. You have no real idea of knowing what people are thinking unless they actually tell you. You just have no idea at all. Don't make any knee-jerk reactions. Don't do that. You're the one who has got to live the decision that you've made for as long as it takes. It could be for the rest of your life, it could be for shorter, but you're the one who's got to live with that. It's your decision ultimately, not what someone else has to say about it. You can't let people rule you like that. You can't let people's attitudes and things like that direct the course of your life. You can't do that. This girl, she missed out. I'm convinced she missed out on what would have been a beautiful relationship with her and that English guy because she just felt, I can't do it. My mum and dad will say A, B, C, D. She didn't, as far as I'm concerned, she didn't credit them with enough intelligence personally. Because as an outsider looking in, as someone who's never met her family, I knew that based on what she told me, based on how they were allowing her to live her life, they were more concerned with her well-being and her happiness than with fulfilling, the expectations of their community. But she wouldn't see that. She refused to see that. So I'm saying to people like, don't allow blessings to pass you by because you fear people's reactions or people's opinions concerning what's going on in your life. Don't do that. Don't make permanent decisions on temporary attitudes and actions and such, because people change their minds. Don't forget, people might say to you, oh, you shouldn't marry someone from here or there because whatever. Could change their mind in 3 or 4 years time. And if you've made a decision, a permanent decision based upon their temporary opinion, you could pretty much find yourself stuffed. You've got to know that when you put your head on your pillow at night, that you can be at peace with the decisions that you've made. Don't live in if only or what if, or if only I had made that decision, or if only I hadn't listened to that person, if only I just believed what I knew was right in my heart to do and followed it. But it's too late. You've got to become expert and making right decisions for your own life. It might not suit everybody's taste. It might not be right in everybody else's eyes, but you know what? You can't live your life according to other people's taste and according to their view through other people's eyes. You've got to make decisions that are right for you and for where you are going with your life. So what if it's radically different from everybody else's? So, who says your life is supposed to be a carbon copy of someone else's anyway? That's how they're supposed to live. You can live differently. You're supposed to live differently. What makes you tick might not make that person tick, and that's okay. But don't allow fear to rob you of your destiny. Don't do that. And for some women and people, just certain people I've had conversations with who want to get married, they're pigeonholing. Put it this way, they're creating the perfect man or woman in their own mind. The man's got to be this tall, he's got to look like this, he's got to come from here. But what if the absolute highest and best for you comes from someplace else? He checks all of the essentials, or what I call the eternal spiritual things like character. He's got all of that, but he just comes in a different package or a different race. Are you going to truly reject this person simply because you can't see past something that's surface? Do you know what I mean? Like people who marry people because they're attractive. Heaven forbid. But what if they have some accident one day that completely robs them of these looks that you married them for? Are you going to divorce them now because they no longer look like they once did? What if they're still a great person? They're still the same person you married, so they just look a bit different now. Are you going to get rid of them because you can't handle that? Are you really that shallow? Really? I think deep down, you can't be that shallow. I'd be very surprised if deep down people really were that shallow. I'd be really surprised. I know that in my 20s, this is like when the internet was new for me anyway, and I was emailing this guy. Well, he first contacted me, and we emailed each other back and forth. And it was via our correspondence I really grew to like him. I remember I'd go to work every day, really keen and eager, looking out for his emails. And so by the time he sent me a picture of himself, I don't know how long after he started emailing me that was, it didn't matter what he looked like because I really, really liked him. I mean, it turned out he wasn't for me in the end, but if he had been, I mean, he wasn't someone from my culture or anything like that, but if we had that connection and he was supposed to be for me, I'd have had to hold my courage and go for it. Because the reality is, this is somebody who I had very, very strong feelings for. And we had very similar interests. The things that were important to me, we shared the same views on certain things that I would have wanted to try and build upon. But when I did try to build upon it, I realized this guy wasn't the one at all. But if he had been all the things that was necessary for me to have in a spouse, I'd have gone for it. I'd have kicked myself all the days of my life never pursuing what was right for me. But as I said, he wasn't right for me, so I let it go. But you've got to recognize that God can bring people in your life who you would never have thought were for you, but they are for you. It's exactly the same thing, just in a different package. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, let's just say someone gives you like a strange shaped package, you know what I mean? But inside it could be, I don't know, £1 million or something really, really amazing. You don't reject it just because like the package isn't what you thought it would be. You've got to open it up. Do you know what I'm saying? When someone comes to you, get to know them, talk to them, find out what their values are, what is their character like, how do they treat people, how do their friends speak about them. Do you know what I'm saying? Those are the things that matter. What they look like, what culture they are, doesn't necessarily matter. As long as you are both clear, you don't flush your culture in the toilet, but you speak to each other and find out. You let the other person know what is important for you about your heritage. Why is this important? Why is that important? Let them know you are proud of who you are, and work that into your marriage. I've seen that happen all the time. People from two different backgrounds, two different nationalities come together. One heritage doesn't have to bow to another heritage. You can find a way to make the two work side by side. It's your marriage. You do it. Don't let people put their mouth in there and tell you this can't work, that can't work, whatever. It's your life together. You figure out what works and keep people and their opinions at the front door on the other side, not inside. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to come on here and say that, like, if you're in a situation where you're hesitating about committing to someone because you fear that your family may not like them, do you know what? At the end of the day, it's about your life. You've got to choose what's right for your life. You've got to take courage in your hands and go for it. If you know this person is right for you, if they have the right, spiritual, emotional, psychological characteristics, if they have the right eternal values, the things that are eternal, the things that will stand the test of time, if they have all of those things that you look for in a spouse, Don't let external pressure or external prejudices or anything prevent you from connecting with that individual. Don't do it. I guarantee you my friend thinks about her ex regularly. I guarantee you she does. And she wonders what might have been. I guarantee you she does. She does. She loved that guy like she's never loved anybody in her life. But fear robbed her of that blessing. So now she's just left wondering what might have been. That's a horrible way to live. It really, really is. Don't allow fear to do that to you. Take your heart in your hands and go for it. You get one shot at this. Make it good. Don't let fear rob you of what is supposed to be yours. So that's all I have to say really today. Short and sweet. Well, hardly short and sweet. This thing's running over the air, over 20 minutes now. I've got to let her stop talking so much. I don't know. My early videos were really short, weren't they, in comparison to this one? But anyway, never mind. Hope you're doing well this Thursday afternoon. It's really dark outside now. It's ridiculous, man. Winter is well and truly upon us. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great evening. And I will see you again soon with another vlog. Take care. Bye-bye.